What is up, y'all? Welcome to the Unconventional Podcast with your girl Kay. I am Sad Kay, and this is a show where I am learning so many different ways of how to embrace my kind of different every single day. And honey, something that I often say is that life is not linear. However, how you choose to live it is what makes you unconventional. So my question to you is, how are you choosing to do something differently today? Drop it in the comments below and let's go hop into the show. Now, if any of this piques your interest, please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Send it to your aunties and your uncles and cousins and them, or simply someone that you think or know may need it. Now, on to today's episode. I assume the introductions are in order because y'all have been seeing a lot of the things that I've been sharing as of lately. And for anyone that may feel like I have just come out of nowhere, I've actually lived a whole life before this phase of life that I'm in at this moment. So, just for the sake of titles, right? Just for the sake of giving you a brief overview of who I am and who I have become over the years, I have been a bootleg hairstylist. I am a, psychology major. So I'm a psychology advocate, mental health advocate, emotional health advocate, right? I am a producer by trade and by passion. I am a, business owner, an entrepreneur. I am a post-production professional, a video editor, so to speak, and a vocal producer, video producer, showrunner, right? And of course, I sing. So, this is just an overview of all the things that I've done over my life that has really made me who I am today. And that is what you will see a lot in the things that I produce today, right? And I guess just a bit of a backstory with my whole editing journey, becoming a producer, being the everyday entrepreneur is it was not conventional. That's the best way I can say it. It was not conventional at all because my first introduction to entrepreneurship was of course when I was in college and I became a bootleg hairstylist. And so if you can see from the very early stages of this channel, a lot of my content was natural hair, videos, finding different, ways to do my hair and all those amazing things. And the funny thing is, I still, post about that today, just in a different format. But because I love working with my hands, one of the first things I learned how to do before I went off to college was braid because I knew that one, I wasn't going to be able to perm my hair. And so transitioning to being natural was like, inevitable. But I knew because I did not know how to manage the two textures, then I needed to learn how to braid. And so once I learned how to braid, it became a skill that I used to it didn't pay my way through college. However, I did not have to worry about food, gas, or paying my car insurance. Glory to God. And honey, it was so fun. It was fun and funny because I think that was the very first taste of entrepreneurship that I had, trying to figure out how to, merge the worlds of customer service, administration, uh, gaining, getting feedback, receiving healthy criticism, while also still making sure that I performed well with, like, that I did good work with the hairstyles that I decided to do. And that's where I learned how to, not put so much on my plate that it was overwhelming, because at one point I was doing crochet braids, box braids, Marley twists, you know, I was doing so much that I just, now looking back on it, I did not have the capacity to do all those things while also running the back end of that business. So I learned a lot for sure from that introduction to entrepreneurship. And of course, transitioning out of not entrepreneurship, but transitioning out of it. Did I ever transition out of it? I think after I graduated, I took a pause, But once again, I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology. So not only was I doing hair on the side, but I was working at Walmart as a cashier, that promoted myself to customer service because it was so much funner. It was so much more fun on the customer service side than it was being a cashier because, you never really knew what it was that was going to happen that day, depending on the customer that you had and the situation that you had to, problem solving is just a big thing for me. And so being in customer service, it was just so much more exciting than just, figuring out how fast you can scan. So but yeah, I worked at Walmart. I was doing hair on the side, and I was also getting my bachelor's in psychology. Now, if you look at my channel today, you will see that I have an emotional health series called Me versus Me. And the funny thing is, that was a concept that I created all the way back in, I think I want to say 2020, and it was originally called Soulish, and it had 3 characters instead of 2. But during my strategy meeting with the Lord as of lately, He asked me a very valuable question, which was, do you have the capacity to do 3 characters? And that's how it became Me versus Me instead of Soulish. But I started that concept and I based it in my psychology background. I paired it with my psychology background because I've always cared so much about the human mind, how the mind of a human works, and how we could merge worlds while also making it fun, while also making it palatable, easy for people to understand and implement in their own lives. And so, yes, I've always cared about, just people in general and making sure that people are good. I think that's just the Southern hospitality in me. Like anybody that's from the South, they know what that's like. You got to make sure that people are good. And so, yeah, mixing those 2 worlds together, that's how it became Me versus Me. And the whole back end of that is from my administrative background. And I don't think I mentioned that in my list of things, but yes, I have a whole administrative background. It was after I graduated from from college, I told myself I was going to go into business for myself eventually, but I knew that it wasn't going to be in the counseling or the psychiatric psychology background. I knew it was going to be something else, but I didn't know how. So the funny thing is, on my way to, doing whatever it is that I thought I was going to do deep down, I started working at Avis Car Rental. Sure did. In Huntsville, Alabama. My friend hooked me up with a job over there. Originally, I was working at the airport, and within 3 months of working there, the Lord positioned me in such a way to where I got promoted. I got promoted in 3 months, and I got a lot of on the spot training because the guy that was leaving, it was once again irrelevant, but the guy that was leaving, he had, I think, might be like a week and a half, 2 weeks before he started his other job. And so had a lot of on the job training, but that is where I really started to understand what it was like to run a business. Thank you, Holy Spirit. That's where I learned how to really run a business because I got a chance to see what all happened in the home office. And let me be very clear, though my position in itself was very administration based, I studied everything that everybody did. I studied what the general manager did, what the supervisor above me did, what the owner of the company did, because she was also at the office working, doing all the things that she did, what the financial, not that he wasn't an advisor, but basically the one who managed the finances, the one who kept the books. I studied what everybody did, and that was such an amazing job because like the relationships that I gained, it was they were great. So I learned a lot just by watching a lot of what they did and seeing how even at that scale how they managed their sphere, their areas in that business and how it all came together. And I worked there during the pandemic, so I was considered an essential employee. And so while everybody else was shut down, I was still working. I was still in the meetings. I was still taking notes. You know what I'm saying? This is why, even to this day, I pay so much attention to detail. It makes absolutely no sense how much attention I pay to every single detail of everything, because, of course, in administration, you take notes so that people can basically relive those meetings. And so, like I said, studying what everyone did, I started to gain a greater level of awareness, especially during the pandemic, and how I would say the business managed during what was perceivably a crisis. That showed me a lot as well. How, at least not in front of me, they didn't fold under pressure. Once again, we had meetings and we figured out how to pivot. We figured out what it was that we needed to cut down on. We tried to figure out what overhead was unnecessary, right? And we tried to create a system that worked well for everybody. And so even though they did not feel comfortable, I can't remember that much. All I'll say was, for me, it was because they didn't want to get rid of me, they just lessened my hours. Does that make sense? So, like, yeah, that was the time where I really learned how the structure of a business ran, what made it successful, the things that happened behind the scenes that many customers don't really see in the forefront of their car rental service. Like, there were multiple businesses being ran in the background that was funding the business that was happening in that moment. So anyway, so yes, that's how I got my administrative background. Moving to Atlanta, which is which is basically, hustle city. It's, every entrepreneur's dream. You get in where you fit in. I started my post-production company right before moving to Atlanta. Had absolutely no idea how I wanted to, build it. But I mean, I started it. And that was the dream. And so upon starting it, I moved to Atlanta, worked in a furniture store. That was fun. I didn't want to do it at first, but that was fun. But once again, I had gotten into this habit of just studying how businesses worked subconsciously, and even seeing how, it was I would say, for the lack of better words, it was like a brick and mortar, like a mom and pop shop, but it was very popular because of how they leveraged social media. And to be completely honest, the furniture sold itself because of the notoriety that it had on the internet. And so for me, like I said, I was just seeing how things were done. Moving past that, still formulating my business underneath, still setting up my website while sitting at the desk at that furniture store, right? I started to dibble and dabble more in the administrative background for small businesses moving forward after I left that small business. So I worked for a wedding company. I worked for the church that I was serving at the time. But the funny thing is, I did a dual job, but I wasn't getting paid to do admin. I was getting paid to sing. Get it how you live. so yes, my administrative background really paid off with me finding my way through the hustle part of Atlanta. And by the time I got acclimated into, like, the worship culture in the church that I was at, and people started to know more and more of who I was, and they started to see how who I was as a person, I started to meet and gain relationships that opened the door for me to actually soar in my post-production business, or just my production business in general. I partnered with a nonprofit, and they basically set me up to be their showrunner for a lot of the nutritional programs that they were doing on the backside of the pandemic to help people live healthier lives with the ingredients and foods that they were serving and giving away at their mobile food pantry, right? And so for me, I was producing their their cooking classes. I was producing their just different segments, different shows that they were posting online or that they were sending off to, like, their sponsors or whatever the case may be, or handling social media content creation for their mobile pantries because they needed somebody on site that was actually there to to document everything, right? So they definitely utilized a lot of my services during that time. And then I transitioned out of that into doing more. I don't even know how to describe it really. I think I just transitioned out of it, started working with another post production company to where they contracted me to do multiple jobs, post production jobs. Like, I wish I had enough time to really break down the types of editing jobs that I had done. So it was no longer just courses or cooking classes or social media. It had become videos that were to present words that were to be presented in galas and fundraisers. You know what I'm saying? It was videos that sponsors needed to see in order to, increase the funding of these programs. Like, actual funding was riding on a lot of, well, the numbers obviously were important, but like showing what it was that these nonprofits, these organizations, these companies do, that adds a lot more notoriety that sponsors and donors could actually contribute to. And so the impact, in my opinion, the impact I feel like was becoming greater with the things that I was producing. And that's where, like I said, partnering with that post-production company, I started to learn a lot about editing. And so when y'all see a lot of my day in the life videos, or even when you see how I edit in a lot of my videos in general, but I have a lot more fun with the day in the life because there's no real structure to it. It's just, all right, I want to put this here, so I'm going to do that, right? And the way that y'all see me edit, it really is because of the things that I learned while I was under, the tutelage of that production company. She taught me so much. Yeah, she taught me so much. And yeah, so a lot of those things that I learned, I implemented in real life today. And like I said, I wish I could put it into words, but I just don't think I have the time nor the words to articulate all that I've learned regarding post-production. And I also wanted to just encourage anybody who is trying to figure out, like, what is it they want to do regarding content creation. You have a desire to start out, but I really want to emphasize the simple fact that it's not linear. It's not a linear process. To be completely honest, there are a lot of resources that I have today that I did not have 3, 4, 5 years ago, but I was still creating. You can see it all throughout my channel. I was always creating with whatever it was that I had, whether it was a Canon camera, T-Rebel, I think, T-Rebel i6 or something like that. I had a Canon, and now I'm editing or filming on my iPhone, right? You use whatever it is that you have to get your point across. So just to encourage anybody who is trying to get into content creation, you don't need a lot. I'm telling you, you don't. And the Lord is very kind to where if it is necessary, He will show you exactly what it is that you need to pull it off. As y'all can see from all this wasn't here about 2 weeks ago. It wasn't here. It, from what y'all could see, I was literally in, my room recording on my iPad and, with my little, condenser mic, right? And the Lord saw that I was trying. He saw that I was trying to work with what I had, and He said, okay, now try this. Add this. Put this here. Okay, now shift this, turn this around. Now blow this up, add this in the corner. And it has turned into this, right? And it has turned into this and what this is. And of course, it's not perfect, but I am so proud, and you will hear me say that as often as I can say it. I'm very, very proud of what this channel has become, not just this podcast, because this podcast is pulling on the producer in me, right? This is one of those things, like I said, God, I don't really know how we're going to get there. I know you called me to be a producer. I know you said that I'm a producer, but I have absolutely no idea how we're going to get to that producer status, because what I had seen a producer to be, it wasn't matching whoever God said I was as a producer. And I assumed that the ladder that I needed to climb to get to that producer life was to maybe be somebody's assistant, right? To jump on somebody else's bandwagon so they could take me under their wing and I could, like, climb the ladder from there. And the truth is, now recounting a lot of my life, that's exactly what happened. It happened in an unconventional way, though. Someone did take me under their tutelage. It wasn't necessarily Tyler Perry, but it was someone who also had an equal value of information that I needed to get to at least this point, right? And so, even on top of the fact that before I moved to Jersey, I speak about that often, that's a whole nother story. But before I moved to Jersey, the Lord made provisions for me to get a job, to get like a contract through Upwork, so that I could so that I could be a showrunner for a virtual company, just for the sake of context, right? And so from that point, I started to realize what it actually takes to be a showrunner, what it is to actually be on the back end of somebody else's production, how to move it forward, how to, the whole scheduling, and, making sure that everybody's on their P's and Q's, making sure we account for timing, the time management of things, the resources that we have to pull these things off, making sure that the people on their side of things, making sure their audio, their, visuals are on set, making sure their graphics are actually presentable. And a lot of those skills I implemented here. I'm implementing here as, like, my own personal showrunner. So if y'all see me every now and again, like, cut my eyes just to make sure ain't nothing go awry, it's the Lord cultivating me, right? So there's so much I can say about being the everyday entrepreneur. But I think in a nutshell, what I will try to leave you all with is that if it's a labor of love, then everything that you do from this point forward, from the time that you start to the time that you see a harvest, it's a seed. So you have to nurture it, you have to water it. And you may not see like immediate growth, but the more that you keep to it, the more consistent you are, you will see something. I'll never forget, because I love to garden. I love seeing that process through, right? And I gardened last year. I planted some basil, and I would say that basil was probably my pride and joy out of all of the things that I tried in that bed, right? Because I was able to see it from seed form to like a cute little sprout to, gaining its first leaf, to the first time that I harvested, to the first time I made basil pesto, right? And it was good. And there's a beauty to, just planting the seed, watering it over time, and seeing it become something better than what you even thought it could have been. And it tasting really good to the, to the palate, to the consumer. So yeah, it really is not a linear journey. It's not a straight line. A lot of the lessons that I have learned, it wasn't in commercial spaces, but it was really just on the way, along the way, right? From studying small business owners to partnering with, a production company that may not have been well known, but had the same amount of valuable content that was needed for my journey. And it's only up from here. And a lot of my content reflects that. And my hope and my prayer is that it continues to reflect that. And I will also say this: being the everyday entrepreneur, you have to listen to the Lord. I mentioned it before, but I have business meetings with God, especially since I am basically a one woman show over here. I have to consult with someone bigger than me. Otherwise, I'm just not going to know what to do or how to do it. And so there are plenty of times when I talk to the Lord about content creation, I just be like, God, I don't know really which angle to take here, because if I do it this way, it's not going to make sense. And I don't like it. And I will sit with it for a while, or I'll go and do something else, and all of a sudden it will come to me just like that. And it will be more like a suggestion of, have you tried this? And I would think to myself, no, I haven't. And by the time I done tried it, it's a hit, It makes me happy on the inside. And so, yeah, I love personally having business meetings with the Lord, just to talk through a lot of the things that matter to me, about this channel. And he's so kind to where he shows me which path to take for his name's sake, because he's a good shepherd. And when it's time for me to back off, then I'll back off. And when I say back off, I mean literally taking moments of solitude. I've talked about it before, about especially being in isolation, but also choosing solitude. But he, as a matter of fact, recently said, girl, take a week off. Because he saw that I was on the brink of burning out. And it's not because I didn't enjoy the things that I was doing. I think it was because I was so passionate about what it was that I was creating that I didn't want to stop. And so he said, hey, I need you to pause for a while. And I didn't realize that there was sleep I was missing out on. There was just rest that I needed. And there were a lot of self-care things that I put on the back burner for a later time, that the Lord was like, okay, later is here. Later is now. So I treated myself to a nice little spa day and really just got back to who I was outside of what it was that I did. And I'm just, like I said, I'm learning to listen to the Lord whenever he tells me to basically go on a vacation, because those are necessary too. And as someone who is, the everyday entrepreneur, people who are just trying to figure out what it's like to run and do your own business, even if it is just you, or, just you or your spouse, or just you and your puppy. One day at a time. One day at a time. Because if you are not good, then your business ain't good. If you ain't good, then what it is that you produce ain't good. I ain't gonna hold you. There's probably been a handful of rush jobs that I've done in post-production that just, I look back on and be like, girl, you could have done better. But because you thought you needed to meet a deadline, because you thought that, because you were on a time crunch, then you needed to just go ahead and throw something together. Now you looking back on it and just like, you should have pushed it back and weighed the consequences later, And I'm still learning that sometimes you just got to push stuff back until you feel right about it. Because if you don't like your work, then what makes you think anybody else is? And so I am proud to say that everything that I've been putting out, I enjoy. I rewatch a lot of my stuff. Probably half of the views that y'all see over there is probably because I be rewatching it, be laughing at my own self. But yeah. Find time for solitude, find time to go back to God and really spend time with him, and to just be, so that you can do better. I reckon I've reached my time now. I really hope that this went well. If y'all enjoyed it, please make sure y'all like, share, comment, subscribe once again. And I reckon I'll just catch y'all in the next one. If y'all got any, any comments, any tips, any questions, please type it below, and let's start a conversation in the chat. I'll catch y'all later. Peace. Hey y'all, that's me. I'm Kay, and I need some help. For the last 3 years, I have been without a car. It was of my own free will. When I paid my last one off, I gave it to my best friend, and I've been kind of moseying about ever since, going on many different adventures, taking the bus, and, kind of just borrowing wherever I could. And if you have ever been without a car, I'm pretty sure you kind of understand how limiting it is to not have one, or to not be able to go wherever you want, whenever you want, or to even, see certain places that you've always wanted to see. Go on certain adventures that you just can't go on at the moment. So The whole point of me sharing this part of my life and journey is genuinely because I would appreciate your help. If I was able to do it myself, then I wouldn't be here, I promise. I started a campaign a couple of months back that basically said Kay needs a car. Donations have been coming in and I'm very grateful, but they have also been a bit far and few in between. Since then, I was approaching it passively until very recently. I have been able to come up with a lot of metrics and systems and plannings for what it is that I want to build out, and the only thing that is missing are the resources. So to raise some awareness and also put my pride aside, because this is definitely hard. Asking for help is always hard. But if you would like to help and, support my journey to rebuilding and becoming more mobile, I would appreciate anyone who is able to sow $1 into this project. I am focused mainly on getting out of debt, so that's where a lot of my energy has been going, at least mentally, for raising money. But if you want to support me getting a car in general, and if you don't mind sharing the word, spreading the love so that, your girl can get back on the road.